Today's daf, we're going to be learning a Shvuot Daf Mem Daled. This is the daf for Shabbat. We're going to get started with Shmuel that we spoke about in yesterday's daf. Shmuel has this law ruling that somebody who lends 1,000 zuz to somebody else, so they give a loan. Let's say I give you a loan for 1,000 zuz, 1,000 shekels, or $1,000, and you give me a handle of a sickle, okay, which is obviously not worth $1,000. Okay, so what happens if I lose the sickle? Shmuel says I can't collect the loan anymore. It's very strange halacha, right? Hard to understand, but perhaps, right, it has something to do with there's one way to understand it is chalipin, that basically when we do that transfer, you give me the collateral and I give you the loan, it's as if we swapped one for the other, and therefore I acquire the mashkon, which we're going to see in Rabbi Yitzchak today, who talks about how a Baal Chov is called a mashkon. The creditor acquires the mashkon, and in place of that, right, I acquire that, you get the money. So if I lose what's yours, right, then I won't be able to collect back my money from you. So now the Gemara had suggested, end of Mem Gimel Amud Bet, Lema Kitanai. We'll start from there. Okay, Lema Kitanai. Let's suggest that this, whether we accept Shmuel or not, is Machloket Tanaim. We're going to actually have two attempts for this today. One is to suggest that it depends on this Machloket Tanaim between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. Another is to suggest that it has to do with a different Machloket Tanaim. That will be more toward the end of the chapter today. Okay, we're going to get close to we're going to finish the chapter today and move on to a new chapter. So the Gemara starts off, Lema Kitanai. Again, we're on Mem Gimel Amud Bet. Hamoveret chavero lamashkon. So I loan you money and take a collateral. At the time, it sounds like, we'll come back to this later, that all happens at the time of the loan. Malva ala mashkon. I loan you money with the condition you're giving me collateral. But avada mashkon. So I take the collateral and then I lose it. Yishavabi tolet ma'utav. I take an oath and then I get my money back. In other words, I take an oath that wasn't my fault. Okay, it got lost, and I can get my money back. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. That sounds like not Shmuel, because Shmuel says if I lose it, I lose my loan. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Yacholu sheyomar klum lo bitani el ala mashkon. Avad mashkon avdu ma'otecha. You could say to me, listen, I gave you the loan with this collateral. You lost the collateral, you lose the loan. Sorry. So that sounds exactly like Shmuel. Aval hamal ve'elef zuz b'shtar v'inech mashkon b'yado. Now, if you loan me elef zuz with a document, and then it's going to be clear the document is to make sure that we know there's a loan. But also you gave me a mashkon, right? There's this whole two sides of how a mashkon works. Does it work because a mashkon is just a way of making sure that I can get a loan back because I have like proof that I gave you the loan? That's called zichron dvarim, which in the case of shtar, we wouldn't have that because I have the shtar as my proof that you lent money, that you borrowed money from me. But if there's no shtar, which is the machloket they were talking about, then there's this machloket really whether is it just so that we remember there's a loan, or is it to collect the loan already? Now, if we view it as collecting of the loan, then again, if the money gets lost, right, then if the collateral gets lost, then theoretically that was in place of the payment. So in a case where there's a shtar, which is already the zichron dvarim, we can't say the collateral is coming for that to make sure that I can get money back because there's proof there was a loan, then it must be coming for collection. Now, if it's there for collection, then divrei hakol avad mashkon avdu ma'otav. In that case, everyone would agree that if the mashkon gets lost, then we lose the money. Now, I want to point out here, it never says anywhere here how much the mashkon was valued at, and that's going to be the whole thing. If we can say that this collateral they were talking about, and we're really interested in the beginning part of this, although theoretically also the end part, but we're talking about, because we want to show the machloket, and we want to show, right, let's just read inside. If the mashkon was worth the exact same amount as the loan, then my time de Rabbi Eliezer, then Rabbi Eliezer makes no sense. And basically from that, they're going to prove that it wasn't worth the same amount, and still Rabbi Akiva holds if I lose the mashkon, I lose my right to get the loan. That's Shmuel. Rabbi Eliezer says no, and then we have proof that this is the debate. The problem is it doesn't really say what the case is. Is it that the collateral is worth the same amount, or is it not? So originally we're going to think that it's not. You know why? Because if we go with that it's worth the same amount, then Rabbi Eliezer doesn't make sense. Why doesn't Rabbi Eliezer make sense? So let's figure it out. If the loan was 1,000 and I took a collateral for 1,000, so we have to just think about this collateral. This this what's the purpose of the collateral if it's the exact same amount? The purpose of the collateral is that I have peace of mind. I loaned you money. Now I know that no matter what, I have my money back because if you don't give me the money, I have the collateral. So I'm good. I'm enjoying this. Now, this is called hana. I get pleasure from this because I know that I have the money, basically. So since I benefit from it, that puts me in the category of a shomer sachar. That's a person who watches. I'm basically watching your collateral. What's my level of responsibility? Because the whole idea is this got lost. Now, if I'm a shomer sachar, this brings us back to Baba Kama. If I'm watching something and I get paid for it, then my level of responsibility is since I'm getting paid, if it gets lost or stolen, I'm responsible because what else am I getting paid for if not that? Now, here I'm not really getting paid. However, the fact that I have peace of mind, that I know I'm getting my loan back, that's benefit, which means that I'm benefiting from this. So I'm watching something while I'm gaining benefit from it. So because of that, Rabbi Eliezer makes no sense. If I lose it and it's the exact value, so if I lost it, I'm responsible to pay you back 1,000, and you're responsible to pay me 1,000. So it's a zero-sum game. We should end with nobody doing anything. And Rabbi Eliezer says, "What do you mean? I could take an oath that it was lost, and I can get my money." That doesn't make any sense. So elalav b'delo shavishir susay. So it must be the collateral was only 500, let's say, and the loan was 1,000. And then b'dishmuel kami palge, and the rachloket is based on whether or not they accept Shmuel. And then you have again, this is the exact debate. If it's not worth the same, which is the way we kind of described it in the beginning, as Shmuel, I give you the loan for 1,000, you give me collateral for 500, and then I lose the collateral. So Eliezer says, well, he doesn't agree with Shmuel. He says, what do you mean? It was only part of the loan. I can take an oath and get my money back. And Rabbi Kiva says, what do you mean? If the loan, right? If let's say we go with the chalipin, it's as if we transfer, right? And I got the collateral, you have the money, and if I lose the collateral, you lose, right? Then you don't have to pay me back, and I lose my right. Okay, so that's Mishmuel, and that's what we thought. That's why we think that this is a machloket Tanaim. But the Gemara is now going to say we're going to have a bunch of different suggestions. The Gemara is going to suggest right now that that's not the machloket. The machloket is not in a case, and we're going to go back to square one and say, what do you mean? The machloket's where the collateral is worth the exact same amount, which means, as the loan, which means there's nothing to do with Shmuel, because Shmuel is only talking about a case when the collateral is worth less than the loan. So let's read inside. Lo, b'delo shave, kol amalei lu d'Shmuel. Everyone agrees that if it's not worth, it was only 500, nobody agrees with Shmuel. This makes sense because Shmuel is a little radical, right? Why? Because, I had the handle of a sickle. I'm not going to get all my money back because I lost that handle of a sickle. Seems crazy. So nobody agrees with Shmuel. And here we are talking about where the collateral was worth the same value of the loan. The machloket is whether or not they accept what Rabbi Yitzchak said. Okay, now again, they're later than Rabbi Yitzchak. I'm sorry, Rabbi Yitzchak is living later than these Tanaim. But the assumption is that whatever Rabbi Yitzchak says, there was a debate about it in the time of the Tanaim. To Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, minayin lebal chov shekoneh mashkon. How do we know that a baal chov, a creditor like me, when I took that collateral, I acquire it? What does acquiring it mean? Well, it means it's mine until you give me my money back, which means that I assume responsibility for it because it's mine. If it's not mine, then it's yours. And if something happens to it, well, tough luck on you. It's yours. What does it have to do with me? Yes, it was in my property, but it was yours. But if I acquire it, then I acquire it for responsibility purposes. Now, how do we know the Baal Chov is Koneh Mashkon? Shenemar ulachati tzedakah. Now, this is a pasuk which talks about when you take a collateral from someone, you have to return it at night so they have something to sleep in. And then it says, uberachachan, if you do that and return it every night, you will be blessed. Ulachati tzedakah l'fnei Hashem Elokechem. And for you, it will be viewed as tzedakah. It will be viewed as a righteous thing that you did by returning it every night. Comes Rabbi Yitzchak, this very famous halach of his. We've learned it already a few times. I see here it's in Psachim, it's in Gitin, it's in Kiddushin, and Bava Metzia. So we've learned it at least 4 times. Ime no koneh mashkon stakaminayin lo. Now, if you didn't acquire the mashkon, then giving it back is not considered stakah, like such a righteous deed. You're giving back something that belongs to someone. It doesn't belong to you. If I'm giving you something that belongs to me, if I acquire the collateral and then I return it every night, that is stakah. But giving you back your own item is not considered charity, or however you might define charity, righteous deed. Mikan lebal chov shekoneh mashkon. From there he learns Baal Chov is koneh mashkon. Now, how does this relate? So let's go back to our machloket. Rabbi Eliezer says He doesn't agree with Rabbi Yitzchak. He says, I didn't acquire it, therefore it got lost. Tough luck on you, it got lost. Sorry, it wasn't my fault. And therefore, what do? I take an oath that it got lost and I get my money back and I get my money back from you. Rabbi Akiva says, no, I acquired the mashkon because I acquired it. The mashkon's worth 1,000. The loan is worth 1,000. I owe you the money back because I acquired it for responsibility. I have to pay you back. Well, you owe me 1,000 anyway, so zero-sum game, end of story. I don't get any money back. So now the Gemara says, if that's the machloket, whether they agree with Rabbi Yitzchak or not, then lema to Rabbi Yitzchak tonight. Then we should say that Rabbi Yitzchak is, if that's the way we understand this machloket. First, we tried to say it was b'shmuel, the machloket was, but then it sounds like the machloket tanaim is whether or not they hold like Rabbi Yitzchak. And B'Tizbara, furthermore, okay, that's somewhat of a problem. Okay, maybe it's a suggestion, maybe it's a bit of a question. Like, no one ever said that what Rabbi Yitzchak says is machloket tanaim. Like, that's a surprise. And B'Tizbara, you really think so? Because Imur da'amar Rabbi Yitzchak, when Rabbi Yitzchak said it, he was talking about shemishkano shelo b'sh'at halva'ah. Rabbi Yitzchak didn't say that every time I get a collateral, I acquire it. He was talking about a collateral that is taken at the time of the payment, when the payment is due of the loan, or after. That means shelo b'sh'at halva'ah, not during the time of the loan, past the time of the loan. If you don't pay me back the money, I can go to court and get a thing that says you have to pay. And if you don't pay, the court can seize a collateral from you. That collateral serves a different purpose than, I just want to remind you, probably don't remember, when we started this Tana'itic source on yesterday's daf, we started in the beginning of also today's daf, the case is hamalveh et chavero ala mashkon. That means I loaned you money and took a collateral at the time of the taking of the loan. That's not when Rabbi Yitzchak said what he said. Rabbi Yitzchak said what he said specifically when I get the collateral at the end, after the payment date is due and you don't pay your loan. Now, obviously, if we go back to this difference, either it's zichron dvarim, so that I know I can get my money back because I have some proof that we had a loan. That usually do at the beginning. But, and even maybe at the beginning, you're taking it ligvia, right? There's two approaches, right? So that I have something to collect. But when I get it at the end, when you don't pay your loan and the due date is up, well, of course I'm taking it to collect. That's the whole point. You're not giving me your money. So I'm taking something from you, I'm seizing it until such time that you give it. And if you don't give it, I'm keeping that. So that's what Rabbi Yitzchak says, I acquired the mashkon because I took it for collection purposes. But shelo b'shar hava'ah, right? But that's mishkano shelo b'shar hava'ah. Mishkano b'shar hava'ah miyamar. Who says Rabbi Yitzchak says this from the beginning of the loan if I took it? And that's what this case is. So you can't say al mishkano shelo b'shar hava'ato if you take the mashkon when it's not the time, meaning past the due date. They both agree with Rabbi Yitzchak that the Baal Chov is kona mashkon. But our machloket is obviously in a different case, and we know because it says it explicitly. Hacha b'mishkano b'sh'at hava'ato. And then, right here, we're talking about it was done earlier, and it's not an issue of acquiring it. It's not, did the Baal Chov acquire, did I acquire the collateral or not? That's not it. So what's the machloket then? So again, we're going to have another attempt to understand what the debate is. And just to be clear here, no matter how we explain the debate, we're going to go through, right, some different possibilities. It's always going to be now, after we've rejected the first possibility, we thought at first it was that the collateral wasn't worth the amount, and that's why we thought it had to do with Shmuel. It wasn't worth the amount alone. From here on in, though, we're going to be within the view that it's exactly equal to the amount of the loan, and then it has nothing to do with Shmuel anymore. So we're off on a tangent because we're away from Shmuel, but we're just trying to figure out what is the root of the debate. Because if we can't come up with anything else, we might go back to saying the root of the debate is Shmuel. So now they're going to give another explanation. B'shomer aveda kamiflagei. Their machloket really has to do with someone who finds a lost item. You're supposed to bring it into your house and watch it. Now the question is, what's your status? When you watch that item, okay, you're supposed to return it. Until such time that you return it, you actually have to take care of it. It's a big topic in the second chapter of Bava Metzia. Here's the machloket. What level of shomer are you? And therefore, what are you responsible for if something happens to it? De'itmar, as it says in a machloket Moraim. Shomer Aveda, Rav Amal, to Shomer Chinam. Rav says, you're watching it for free, because, right, what are you gaining from this? You have a mitzvah, you have to keep the mitzvah, you're watching someone's Aveda, you're not getting paid for it. So, of course, you're a Shomer Chinam. And okay, let's just go back now. Whose opinion? Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. So Rabbi Eliezer says, now, you're watching this Aveda right now. You're watching this collateral while it's in your property. So what's your level of responsibility toward it? Well, you're not gaining anything from it. That's going to be a bit of a question. But right now, we're going to assume you're not gaining. And therefore, you're like a shomer chinam, which means if you lose something, you just take an oath about it, and then it's as if you're not responsible. So that's Rabbi Eliezer. Yishavavi yitol ma'otav. I swear it got lost. It's not my responsibility, and therefore I can collect the whole loan back. Turning out on the bet, Rav Yosef Amar Shomer Sachar Dami. Rav Yosef says, no, you're like a Shomer Sachar. Now, before we said you're a Shomer Sachar because you're getting peace of mind, the fact that you have this collateral. But now the sugya actually appears somewhere else, and there the sugya talks about why you're a Shomer Sachar. And they say, I believe it's in Bava Metzia there, they say that you're getting, and Rashi says it here, quotes it, Sachar mitzvah. You're getting a mitzvah because what happened? First of all, you gave a loan. That in general is a mitzvah. So one option is to say, this is all part of a loan. You took collateral for part of your loan, right? For part of loaning money. Loaning money is a mitzvah. So you're actually a shomer sachar because you're getting a mitzvah. Okay? The fact that you're watching this collateral, it's all part of your loan to this person. Some people say it's actually you're getting a mitzvah because you're watching the person's collateral. And in other words, you took collateral because of this loan, and now you're watching it. For them, it's like watching a lost item. And that's a mitzvah. And therefore, since you're doing a mitzvah, you're getting a reward. It's very interesting. It's not a financial payment, but you're getting a payment because you're getting benefit from this, because you're getting a mitzvah. And because now, what's the mitzvah? So some people say it's just because you're getting a mitzvah. But there's another opinion, which is, and it's actually called the Pruta de Rav Yosef because of this, which is while you're doing a mitzvah, you're actually exempt from a mitzvah. So, and this comes up in Aveda. If you're watching someone's Aveda and you're busy dealing with it, and a poor person comes to your door and wants money, you don't have to give them. So you're actually saving money. It's not like you're getting money, but saving money is like getting money. And you're saving money because you don't have to give poor people money at the time that you're engaged in this mitzvah. So that's another possibility as to what the gain is here. So the gain is either mitzvah gain, the gain is because the mitzvah you're gaining financial benefit. Either which way, there's some sort of benefit. If there's benefit, Rav Yosef says, you're a shomer sachar. If you're a shomer sachar and it gets lost, you actually are responsible. So because you're responsible, again, we go back to, well, then you have to pay 1,000 shekel. Well, you don't have to because they owe you 1,000 shekel, zero-sum game. We leave everything as it is, and you're not going to get your loan back. So that's the way they explain it. And then it's basically, Rabbi Eliezer again holds like Rabbah, Rabbi Kiva holds like Rav Yosef. But if again the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, Lema de Rav Yosef Tanai, then what are we saying? Rav Yosef is a machloka Tanaim, and again, it's not like we knew that from any other place. So the Gemara now rejects this explanation and says, lo. B'shomer aveda d'kuleami yilu de Rav Yosef. Everybody agrees when you're watching a lost item. Everyone agrees with Rav Yosef. What Rav Yosef says about aveda is not a debate. This, however, is a debate. Why? Well, hacha, this is a little different than a shomer aveda because hacha. The mavet sarich lemashkom kamiflagei. They're arguing in a case where the mavet needs the mashkom. What does that mean, needs the mashkom? So Rashi explains, not everybody agrees with this, but Rashi explains it's a case where I say, let's say I borrow your millstone, and I take your millstone as collateral. And I say, I'm going to use the millstone every day. And every day, a day's use of a millstone is worth $10. And over X amount of time, every day I will deduct $10 from the loan. And eventually you won't owe me anything. And then I'm benefiting using the millstone. So now that's called a malvet sarich lemashkon kamiflagei. It's a loan where I get to use the mashkon. Now, because I'm benefiting from it, right? Mar savar mitzvah kavid, umar savar lav mitzvah kavid. So one says I'm doing a mitzvah because I'm right? Even though I'm gaining benefit, we still call that a mitzvah. It doesn't matter. Right? If I gain personal benefit from the mitzvah, I'm still doing a mitzvah because I'm taking care of your collateral or just the loan itself. Even though I'm actually benefiting from it, we still call that a mitzvah. If it's a mitzvah, I'm a shomer sachar. If I'm a shomer sachar, then I'm responsible for aveda. If we say it's not a mitzvah because I'm gaining personal benefit, we can't call that a mitzvah. Well, then we're going to say, then I'm actually not a shomer sachar, I'm a shomer chinam. And that's why we can say in this case, right, Rabbi Eliezer is going to say, oh no, I'm not responsible for anything. And therefore, since I'm not responsible for anything, therefore, if it gets lost, it's your fault, your problem, and I can still claim my money back. So in the end, we explain their machloket is having to do with a case where it's a malvet sarich lemashkon, where specifically I'm using it, and the whole question is, does that mean I'm no longer a shomer sachar because I'm not benefiting anymore, or am I still because I'm still considered that I'm doing, right? Do we still view me as doing a mitzvah, or do we reduce the mitzvah because I'm gaining personal benefit, and then it's not called really doing a mitzvah when there's personal benefit in it for me? Which is an interesting concept in and of itself. Now the Gemara moves to, now we go back to Shmuel. This was all, I just got to remind you, we started with this because we had this law of Shmuel, where if you have part of a loan, a collateral, which is worth part of the value of the loan, and it gets lost, basically the whole loan is canceled. Can't collect the loan anymore, which we tried to suggest maybe that's the machloket between Rabbi Eliezer or Rabbi Kiva. In the end, we say no. Their machloket is not in a case where it's not worth the same value. They're only arguing in a case where the collateral is worth the exact value as the loan, and only then will we have this debate. But neither of them really agrees with Shmuel, or at least we can explain it that way. And the machloket has to do with, is this a mitzvah or not, since we've reduced it because you're benefiting from it. Okay, and therefore perhaps that lowers the amount of mitzvah and the amount of reward that you're getting. Now, or lowers it to, we don't consider that you're getting any reward or not, or you still consider getting a reward. If you're getting a reward, you're shomer sachar, you're already responsible for damage, for something that happens, even if it gets lost. Okay. Lema kitanai. But now let's try a different Tannaitic debate and suggest that this is the machloket. This Tannaitic debate is whether we agree with Shmuel or not. A little background before we get there. When the Shemitah year comes every 7 years, it cancels loans. However, if you loan someone money with a mashkon, with a collateral, it doesn't cancel the loan. Why is that? Because it's as if the loan is already collected. This goes back to what we've been talking about, collateral in general. It's as if I collected the loan because I already have something in my hands. So because of that, when the Shemitah year comes around, the whole issue is don't collect loans that are due, but it's not really due because I already have the collateral in my possession. So Hamalva et Chavero ala mashkon, this Tannaitic source starts like this. V'nichnisa shmita, and then Shemitah year comes. So we have a collateral, Shemitah year comes. Here we get to the same kind of case. Even if the collateral is only worth 500 out of 1,000, eno mishamit, doesn't cancel the loan. I'm sorry, the Shemitah year doesn't come and cancel the loan. The loan's not canceled. Divrei Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Shimon ben Gamliel says your loan's not canceled because you have a collateral. The big question is going to be, is the loan not canceled at all? Meaning the entire loan is not canceled, or just the part that's opposite, right, that you have a mashkon on, the first 500 that you have a collateral for, that's not canceled, the other 500 is. We're going to try to figure this out. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi Omil. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, Im hayam mashkeno keneged chovo eno mishamet. If the mashkon was the same amount as the chov, as the obligation, then it's not canceled. But im lav, mishamet. But if not, it's canceled. So now, when Tanakama says your loan's not canceled, Ilema, what was he talking about? Ilema Kenegdo, did he mean just the 500 that corresponds to the amount you have a collateral for? Well, if you say that, the Michlal de Rabbi Yehuda Nasi Savar Kenegdo Nami Mishameh, then Rabbi Yehuda is going to say that 500, right? The 500 is canceled also, right? Meaning the whole thing is canceled, even where the part you have a collateral for. Well, if that's the case, it makes no sense. Ela amai tafis mashkon. Well, why would I take a collateral? Here's an interesting assumption. One could claim otherwise, but why do I take a collateral? I take a collateral so I'll have money to collect in case you don't pay back. But according to the Gemara here now, they say I must be taking a collateral exactly to avoid the loan being canceled. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, if I took a collateral for 500 and the loan was 1,000, nothing of this loan is protected. Everything is canceled. But then why would I bother with the mashkon if not to protect myself from Shemitah? At least 500 shekels worth won't be canceled. So elalav keneged kulo. It must be that we're talking about it's against the whole thing, meaning the value, right? That if I take a collateral for 500, Shmuel says the entire loan is canceled, and Rabbi Yehuda says only 500 is canceled. Because again, the assumption of the previous line was there's no way, right? Of course, I took collateral exactly to protect me, at least for those 500. So even Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says those 500 are protected. And according to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, the entire thing is protected. Now, if you say the entire thing is protected, that's Shmuel. If you say only the part opposite the collateral, that's Rav. That's Rabbi Shmuel. That's against Shmuel. So they say lo. Not necessarily. And then again, we're not going to have an ability to say this is a Tannaitic proof, a source, proof from a Tannaitic source. Lo olam kenegdo. Really, it means just the 500, meaning Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel thinks just the 500 is protected. The rest of the loan is actually canceled, and the rabbis think that nothing is canceled. So now, I'm sorry, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi thinks that nothing is canceled. There are no rabbis here. It's Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel and Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. So now we're going to explain. Tanakama savar kenegdo. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi savar kenegdo nami mishamed. So again, Tanakama says the 500. Tanakama is Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. The 500 is protected. The rest of it is canceled. The Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says the whole thing is canceled. Okay, now Udakamar to the my tapsle mashkon. So if we say, why would I bother taking a mashkon? The zichron dvarim ba'alma. This goes back to something we were discussing previously. Just the collateral was just to make sure that I can claim that I had a loan if you tried to say there was no loan. But it's not coming to protect you from Shemitah Ksafim, from the Shemitah you're canceling it. And therefore, this is not the same machloket. And with that, Hadran alach shvuat hadayanim. Before we move to the next chapter, I'll just do our review. So we took two different machlokot tanaim and tried to suggest, right, there were details missing in each source, and we tried to establish maybe this is the exact same case that Shmuel is debating, that Shmuel is commenting on, and that the debate between these two tanaim are, do we hold by that principle or not? But in the end, we reject both. And just remember, it's not that they hold like Shmuel. Shmuel came after them, but do they hold by the principle that Shmuel was talking about? Now we move to the new chapter. We're going to talk about Shvuah D'Oraita and Shvuah D'Rabbanan. Shvuah by Torah law, okay, happens in a few cases. Like, for example, if there's one witness that comes and says, right, I claim the item's mine, I bring a witness that says it's mine, it's in your property, and I want to take it from you, but I only have one witness, right? If I have two witnesses, I can get it. If I have only one witness, then you have to take an oath. And then you have to say, right, it's really mine, and you get to keep it. That's what we call Nishba'im v'lo mishalmim. Okay, another one is moda b'miktzat. You admit to have the claim, right? So then you can claim, once you admit to have the claim, you can take an oath that you don't know anymore. Okay? So kol nishba'im shebetorah nishba'im v'lo mishalmim. So the shvuah by Torah law is to take an oath and keep the status quo. This fits with all the principles of hamotzi mechaver alav haraya, right? To get money out of someone, the burden of proof is on you. So right, it's always easier to keep the money status quo. Keep it where it is. So anytime we have an obligation of an oath, it always goes on the person, Torah law, it always goes on the person who's basically has the money in their possession, and they just want to keep it there. And then we're going to say, right, if you won't take the oath, then you'll have to pay it. But if you're willing to take the oath, then you get to keep the money. But there's 5 cases we're going to talk about right now. We'll only see 3 of them today inside, which are cases where someone could take an oath and actually take money out of someone else's hands. And this is rabbinic. The rabbi said in these cases, try to figure out why in each case, that you're allowed to take an oath. You'll see the first 2 we're going to talk about today are all the underdogs. Okay? The underdog and the one who seems to be being oppressed by somebody else, we're going to allow them so that the bullier person, right, doesn't bully them and try to take money away from them and get away with it. We're going to allow them to take an oath in order to take money out of the possession of the other person. So what's our case? Hasachir. We have a worker, an employee. Ketzad, what's the case? Amar lo tein li schari sheyesh biyadcha. Say, hey, you didn't pay me for my work. Hu omer natati. You say, what do you mean? I gave you already. Hala omer lo natalti. And I say, I didn't take any money. Harei zeh, the Bach changes the word. Harei zeh nishba v'notel. I can take an oath to get my money because we're always worried that employers are not paying their people, their workers, and the worker could be taken advantage of. So in this case, the rabbi said, if you're willing to take an oath, we'll allow you to collect your money. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't agree completely. He says, you need a partial, a moda b'miktzat, a partial admission. Only if there's a partial admission, we'll read it now. Ketzad omer lo ten li schari 50 dinar. Sheyesh b'yadcha. Say, listen, pay me 50 dinar that you owe me. V'hu omer hitkabalta dinar zahav. And the guy says, listen, I already paid you half. A dinar zahav is worth 25 silver dinarim, and I was claiming 50 silver dinarim. So you say you paid me half, you didn't pay me the other half. That's called moda b'miktzat. Now, normally by Torah law, you would take an oath that you don't owe the other half. But in this case, we allow me to take the oath. We basically shift the oath to the other person. Okay? So Rabbi Yehuda doesn't allow this oath to take money unless there's already an obligation of an oath. Right? According to the rabbis, the Tanakama, it's a new oath the rabbis are kind of creating. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's only when there's already a Torah obligation for an oath, we just flip it to the other person and allow them to collect rather than allowing the other one to be exempt. Nigzal ketzad, someone who was stolen from. How? People testify that you came into my house to take a collateral against, right? You didn't have permission. You can't come to my house to take collateral unless the Beit Din comes in and the Beit Din has permission, but you didn't have permission. And then you come in and you walk out. The Gemara is going to say that you obviously walked out carrying something. We just couldn't see what it was. So that's why they call me an exalt, because you did steal something from me. It's just we don't know what. So who omer kelai natalta? I say you took my vessels. Who omer lo natalti? And you said I didn't take anything. Who nishba b'notel? Okay, I can take an oath and get my items back. Rabbi Yehuda omer, no. Ad shtei sham miktzat oda. Rabbi Yehuda is very consistent. There has to be moda b'miktzat here. You have to admit to part of it. Ketzad omer lo shnei kelim natalta. I said you took two vessels. You admit that you stole something, but you said I only stole one. Okay, and then again, according to that, Rabbi Yehuda says, then I could take an oath. But if you deny the entire claim, there's no oath. Nechbal ketzad. What's the case of nechbal? That means someone who was injured. Witnesses say, I walked into your house. I was completely fine. I walked out with a big injury. And I say, you injured me in your house. You say, what are you talking about? I did not. I take an oath and I get the payment back. You see, again here, I'm the underdog, right? Because I walked in, I was fine, and I walk out injured. Seems like you did it. Rabbi Yehuda Omer again, what would be a miktzat oda'ah? In this case, a partial admission. Ketzad, Omer lo chavalta b'shtayim, Omer lo chavalta b'yelachat. Right? I say you hit me twice, and you said I only hit you once. So you agree to half of it, you don't agree to the other half. In that case, I'd be able to take the oath and get paid the full value that I claim. Okay, and thus we finish our shir today. So the first part I already reviewed. The second part is just these 3 out of 5 cases we're going to see where, even though by Torah law, generally you take the oath to exempt yourself from payment, in these cases we're going to allow the other side to basically take an oath to get paid and have the other side pay them money. And that's because at least the first 3 we saw, they were the underdog and clearly the other person wronged them in some way, and therefore we're going to go on their side. And Rabbi Yehuda says there has to be some sort of oath here. You can't just make up an oath. Rabbis can't just make up an oath. It has to be that there was an oath. We just flip it to the other person. And with that, we finish today's daf, wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov.